Hi guys, in this recording, I'm going to be talking about example 2 in lecture 3. So in example 2, we are just looking at another cross-rate arbitrage problem. And let me just share the problem with you before we start. So this is example 2 in lecture 3. So in this problem, we have a triangular currency arbitrage. So whenever we see three different currencies in a problem, then this is a triangular arbitrage problem, okay? So in this problem, we have three currencies. We've got the franc, we've got the USD, and we've got the Australian dollars, okay? So for each of these exchange rates, we're given the bid and ask price. So the question here is, do we have an arbitrage opportunity? And if so, how much do we earn with 1 million USD available to trade? Okay. So suppose we start with the Australian franc cross rate, meaning that we will compute the cross rate between the Australian dollars and the franc. Okay. So we're going to compute the cross rate between the two exchange rates, between the first two exchange rates. So let's go through the problem together. So the first step in this problem is we need to calculate the cross rate first. Now we have already worked out how to do a cross rate calculation in lecture 2 and as well as in the tutorial in week 3. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm just going to go to my note and show you now. Okay, so this is my note, and what I have here is I have got the calculation of the bid ask cross rate on the first page. Okay. So once again, we start with the Australian franc exchange rate, and in this exchange rate, the commodity currency is the franc. So the one in the denominator is the commodity, and the measurement currency is the Australian dollar. Okay. So the measurement currency is the price of the commodity currency. Okay. So to compute the bid rate for the Australian dollar and the franc, I'm going to write this equation here. This is very similar to the exercise we went through in the tutorial. Okay. So I'm going to start with writing the bid rate for the Australian divided by franc exchange rate on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to have the bid rate for Australia divided by the USD times the bid rate for the USD divided by the franc. Okay. So one way to check is these two should cancel out and we're left with Australian divided by franc. Okay. So in the question, we're given in the first two exchange rates, we're given the Australian dollars divided by the USD, and we're given the franc divided by the USD, right? So if we look at this equation here on my right-hand side, if I look at the table, I can look up this number directly, right? So this is just the left-hand side rate for the Australian divided by USD exchange rate, okay? So this number is would be found directly in the table. My second component is the bid rate for the US divided by the franc exchange rate. Now, this is not directly given in this table, but we have the reciprocal in the table, okay? So what we have to do next is therefore to take the reciprocal of the exchange rate on the right, okay? So if I take the reciprocal of this, I will get this. And if I look up in my table, I can find this term, right? So this would be the ask rate for the franc divided by the USD exchange rate. And this will be your exchange rate on the right-hand side, okay? So if I look up on the table, I will find that these are the relevant numbers that I need for this calculation. And if I put them in the calculator, this will be my bid rate for the Australian franc exchange rate, okay? So this is the bid cross rate. Now, one point to note is that we were going to keep 4 decimal places for a exchange rate calculation. Yeah. I'm going to move on to my ask rate. So in this case, the calculation is exactly the same. I'm just going to change from the superscript B to superscript A. Okay. So once again, with the first exchange rate, this is given directly in the table. And because I'm looking for an ask rate, I'll be looking at the right-hand side, okay, for the Australian divided by the USD exchange rate. With the second term, we've got the reciprocal in the table. So I'm going to just take the reciprocal here. And what I have here is the bit rate for the franc divided by the USD, okay? So this is the bit rate. So I'm going to be looking at the left-hand side on my table for the franc divided by the USD. So if I put the correct numbers in their places, I will find that the ask cross rate for the Australian divided by franc exchange rate is 1.1408. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next page. So once I have the cross rate, I'm going to be writing the cross rate here. So this is the cross rate I just computed before for the Australian divided by franc exchange rate, right? So on the left-hand side, the implied bid rate is 1.1399 and the implied ask rate is 1.1408, okay? So what these rates means is that for the first two banks, let's say each bank specializes in one currency exchange rate, right? So for the first 2 banks, this is implied that they are willing to trade 1 franc. So they're willing to buy 1 franc for 1.1399 Australian dollars, okay? On the right-hand side, this rate says that the first 2 banks are willing to sell a franc for 1.1408 Australian dollars, okay? In terms of the third bank, so this is the market rate that we observe for the third bank. So they give us a direct quote of Australian dollar divided by franc exchange rate. So for this bank, they are trading the franc at 1.1450. So they're buying the franc at 1.1450 and they're selling the franc at 1.1458, okay? Now, our task here is when we look at the 2 rates, when we look at the cross rate and the market rate, we need to be able to identify if there is any arbitrage profits, right? There's any arbitrage opportunity for traders, okay? Now, imagine that you are a client or you're a trader, you're a currency trader. You log into the market, you log into your account, and you see these quotes, right, from 2 different banks. What do you think, right? So in this case, you need to think about whether there's any mispricing for you to take advantage of, okay? So for a trader to profit, they will profit if they can buy low. So if I trade something, I will make a profit if I can buy an asset at a lower price and I can sell the asset at a higher price, right? Okay. So in observing these rates, what we want to do is we want to identify whether there is any chance for us to buy the franc at a low rate and then sell it at a higher rate, right? Also bear in mind that because we are a client, we'll be looking at the right-hand side when we buy the franc, and we'll be looking at the left-hand side when we sell the franc, okay? So can you look at these 2 different columns and identify if you have any chance to buy low and sell high, okay? All right, so what do we think? Now, if I want to buy low and sell high, I can identify an opportunity for me in this case, yeah? So if I can buy the franc at this rate, this is 1.1408, I can sell it at this rate, right? So on the right-hand side, I can buy the franc at 1.1408 of the Australian dollar. And on the right-hand side, I can sell it at 1.1450, okay? So effectively, I'll be earning a profit of 42 basis points, okay? So 42 basis points is 1.0042, okay? So as a result, for me as a trader, as an arbitrager, my strategy is to buy the franc at 1.1408 Australian dollars via the cross rate. So what do I mean by that? That means I'm going to be buying the franc in exchange for the Australian dollars indirectly through the first two banks, okay? So in this buy transaction here, it will involve two banks, the first two banks, okay? At the same time, I'll be selling the franc at 1.1450 in the market, okay? So to the third bank, okay? So this is to bank 3. So with the buy transaction, I'll be buying the franc through the first two banks, which means if we go back to the slide here, so in buying the franc through the first two banks, what I'm doing here is I will be buying the franc. I'll be exchanging the USD for the franc from the first bank, and then I'll be exchanging the Australian dollar for the USD in the second bank, right? So in other words, to buy the franc through the first two banks, I will first. So what we want, I'm just going to write what we want here so that we know what we're doing, okay? So I want to exchange the franc, I want to exchange the Australian dollars for the franc through the first two banks, yeah? So in this transaction, I want to acquire the franc and I want to exchange for it using the Australian dollars, okay? So if I do that through the first two banks, effectively I'll be first exchanging the Australian dollars for the USD from the second bank. So I'll be selling the Australian dollars, acquire the USD. Second, I will take the USD I got from the first step. I'll use that to exchange for the franc, okay? So in the second step, I will be selling the USD to acquire the franc, okay? So you can see here through these two transactions, effectively, I have just exchanged the Australian dollars for the franc, okay? So this is how you get the cross rate. Okay, so I'm just going back to my workings here. So we just mentioned before that with the buy transaction here, because we're buying the franc through the first two banks, what we're going to do is we're going to first sell the Australian dollars to acquire the USD. So I'm selling the dollar for the USD, and then I'm going to take the USD in the first step. I'll be selling the USD to get the franc, okay? With the second transaction, it's more straightforward. So in this case, I'll be selling the franc to obtain the Australian dollars. Okay. So one way I can illustrate the transactions involved in this strategy is I can draw this triangle here. So I'm going to have the franc, I'm going to have the Australian dollars, and I'm going to have the USD. Okay. So the arrows here tells me the direction of the transaction. So here I'm from the franc to the Australian dollars. I'm going to be selling the franc to acquire the Australian dollars here. Okay. So I'm referring to this step over here. From the Australian dollars to the USD, I'll be selling the Australian dollars to get the USD. From the USD to the franc, I'll be selling the USD to acquire the franc. Okay. So you can see that the arrows should form like a circle like this. Okay. So why is that the case? That's because we want to start with the franc and then we want to end up with the franc. Okay. So to summarize, in this strategy, I will have 3 transactions involved. Firstly, I'm going to sell the franc to get the Australian dollars at 1.1450. Second, I'm going to be selling the Australian dollars to acquire the USD at the second rate in the table. This is the reciprocal because I'm talking about the USD. Okay. Sorry, I'm talking about the Australian dollars, selling and buying Australian dollars here, but it's not that important for now. My third transaction is I'm going to sell the USD to acquire the franc at 1.5971, okay, which is to the first bank. Now, so once we get here, we have solved half of the problem, right? So the second half is just to rearrange the transactions to fit with our starting position, okay? So suppose that we are an arbitrager from the US. So we start with our own currency, which is the USD, right? So if I want to start with the USD, I'm just going to be rearranging my my transactions so that I can start with the USD, right? So from these 3 transactions, I'm going to rearrange it like this, okay? So if I'm starting with 1 million USD to trade, if I'm starting with the USD, I'm going to be looking at this direction, right? So from USD to the franc, from the franc to the AUD, and then finally from the AUD to the USD, okay? So from the USD, I'm going to be selling the USD for the franc. And if I'm selling the USD for the franc, it will be with the first bank, right? So with the bank that quote the franc over the USD exchange rate. So if I start with 1 million USD, I'll take 1 million, I'll times it by the amount of franc per USD. And I'll get about 1.5 million franc, okay? So I'll take the amount of franc, I'll take the franc proceeds from the first step to the second step. So once I get the franc from the first step, I'm gonna take the franc and I'm gonna exchange it for the AUD, okay? So I'm gonna sell the franc to buy the AUD. So from about 1.5 million franc, I'll take this and I'll times it by the AUD divided franc exchange rate, okay? Divided by franc exchange rate. which is here, which is from the third bank. Okay. So if I do so, I will acquire about 1.8 million Australian dollars. So from this 1.8 million Australian dollars, I'm going to sell these dollars. I'm going to sell these Australian dollars to buy the USD. Okay. So from 1.8 million Australian dollars, I'll be dividing that by the Australian divided by USD exchange rate. Okay. So overall, my USD amount, my USD proceeds from the third step would be 1.003 USD. Okay. So in this case, we make a small profit. Okay. So from all these transactions, we started with 1 million USD. We end with 1,003,600 something USD. Okay. So we make a profit of about 3,600 USD from this trading strategy. Okay, so here I'm just going to list out all the transactions. So as we mentioned before, the final profit is a 3,600 something USD figure. Okay, so we started with the USD, we end with the USD. Okay, so in the end, through this arbitrage strategy, we have no foreign exchange rate risk exposure because we end with the same currency that we started. This is a zero cost strategy because whatever we have to out pocket at the start, we can finance for it in the third transaction, right? So we started with a million USD at time zero. We started with 1 million USD. By the end of the trading day, we get back 1 million 3,066 USD. Okay. So at the end of the trading day, we don't owe anyone any money. Okay. And we walk away with a profit of 3,600. Okay. So this is a zero risk, zero cost strategy. So by definition, this is an arbitrage strategy. Okay. Arbitrage profits.